Good morning. Good morning, Simon. Good morning,
Morning.
Simon.
Good morning.
Good to see you this morning. And thank you for accepting to work with us on this particular wonderful project from FAO, which you're already aware of. And I hope today, and which I'm sure actually, that all our wonderful companies from Western Balkans will enjoy it, of your knowledge, of your experience, expertise. And in particular, Simon used to visit Serbia and the region several times, if I remember. Right, Simon, Sally, I would like you to introduce yourself.
Sure. Well, let me first introduce myself. Jadranka, pleasure to be with you again today, and Alex and the rest of the team. As you said, yes, I've visited Serbia a couple of times. I was at the inaugural Belgrade Food Show a few years ago, and had the pleasure of meeting with several producers firsthand, where we gave some one-to-one market advice and pointers on their brands for the UK market, and delivered some information and insights at that time, and kept in touch with the Serbian community in one way or another since then as best I can. So it's great to know that there's such a presence coming to IFE in a couple of weeks' time. It's come around very fast, and we hope that some of the information and insights that we're sharing with you today will be of interest to you, and give you some ideas about how to prepare for the UK market or further develop your business. So I'm joined today by my colleague Sally, who we both worked together on these types of projects many times in the past. Our background is in food and drink. I'll tell you a little bit more about the Green Seed Group, and we'll get on and get into the presentation. So I'll just open our presentation document for you now, and we'll kick off.
Can I just say hello as well?
Please
so
do.
Again, Jadranka and Alex and all of you listening, thank you very much for inviting me to help share some of my knowledge today. Like Simon, I've worked in the food industry a long time, probably over 30 years now, dare I say it. First of all in the production side, and later in the commercial side. So I've been in the sales side for a number of years, firstly for big UK companies with an emphasis on specialty food and foods. And then I've been a consultant for 15 years, working with world companies looking to launch in the UK, particularly specialty and luxury items. Back to you, Simon.
Okay, thank you. So, okay. Okay, right. Well, good morning again. I hope everyone can see the screen and the beginning of our presentation. I'll kick off for you with a brief introduction about Green Seed. You don't want to hear too much about us. You're more interested in hearing about the UK market, so I'll make this one fairly brief. Essentially, Green Seed is an international sales and marketing consultancy and agency business, which is focused exclusively on food and drink. So we've all got an international background. I own and run our business in the UK, and I've got colleagues who run similar Green Seed businesses in other parts of the world. We've all worked in the food and drink industry, whether in retail, food service, marketing, or on the commercial side of things. We absolutely love everything to do with the industry, and we love sharing our insights and partnering with companies to help them grow their business. Our international operations are mostly focused in Europe, where we have 9 offices. Just recently opened an office in Warsaw, in fact, which is dealing with many of the markets in Central and Eastern Europe. We don't have a physical presence in the Western Balkans at this stage, but obviously our focus is more on helping those companies come into the UK market rather than go into the Western Balkan region. We also have an office, in fact, a couple of offices in the US market that deal with both USA and Canada. And essentially, we work very closely with the bigger retailers and smaller retailers too, food service businesses and distributors in all of those markets. Essentially, what we do is help help our clients to identify the right markets for them, to position their products in the right way, and then to find the best local market strategy to enter the market and further develop their market, because there's always more than one option, if you like. We work very closely across all of the supply chains, so not just with retail buyers and so on, but also with wholesalers and distributors, with third-party logistics providers and so on. So it all depends which part of the market you want to target, and this is all, of course, what we're going to be talking about shortly. And as a result, we've got expertise and knowledge about mainstream supermarket retailing, but also online channels and the health sector and food service, and even business to business as well. And we have our own in-market sales teams to help win listings as well. So essentially, we help to connect people with the market, to understand the market, and then to grow their business. And I guess the four key themes are, identifying the opportunities, developing the right strategy to enter the market and the commercial plans, make the sales actually happen, and then grow the business once it's there with marketing activities and account management. So that's a very brief introduction to us, and obviously if you want to know more about us, happy to discuss, and I hope I'll meet many of you face to face anyway during IFE to take any particular questions that you might have. I want to just start with a bit of context before we get into the different channels that you can focus on, just with some key highlights about the UK. So some key reasons why you might be interested in the UK market. I assume you already are, because otherwise you wouldn't be on this webinar, you wouldn't be coming to the UK. But let me just highlight a few key facts. So I guess first of all is size. We are a pretty big market, so getting on for 70 million population now. So in terms of scale, that's important, but also in terms of openness and centralization. So I guess the UK mentality is very open to other parts of the world, to food products which come from different regions. We've got a very centralized multiple retail grocery structure as well. It's not at all fragmented for the most part. We've got in London itself a market that some brands choose to focus on to the exclusion of the rest of the UK. So London is the size of a small European country, and London can be a target market if you've got a metropolitan brand launch strategy. It's often the place where people will seed new brands anyway, because that's where the trends start, particularly trends that often come from the US in health and plant-based and so on. You then see them establishing themselves in London and then spilling out into the rest of the UK before they then sometimes move across to the rest of the European continent. So experimental, eager to try out new things. We are already minded to import food and drink. So we import a lot more food and drink in the UK than we export. That's not because we're not good at exporting, it's because we are very interested in getting imported food into the UK. But we're also interested in innovation in particular. So not just Me Too products, and value, especially in today's climate. I think this is an important point to make, is value is not just about cheap prices for a UK shopper. It's about a combination of quality and price. So even in tough times when budgets are tight, UK shoppers are looking for a combination of quality and price. It's not like the German market, for example, where they're 45 to 50% hard discounters dominating the market. We're much more quality conscious in general. Authentic food and drink is another important characteristic. There is quite a big group of consumers who really are interested in buying authentic food and drink with provenance, with a heritage from a certain country or region or method of production. So again, I think that's something to bear in mind if your products have those characteristics. In terms of general consumer trends, these are now normalizing across all of Europe, I would say, but certainly very, very important in the UK. Plant-based has been a phenomenon, really, the last 2 or 3 years. free from foods in general. Obviously that goes with plant-based. Everything to do with health, gut health in particular, has been a particularly strong theme. Natural foods, clean label, by which I mean not having any preservatives or additives of any sort, ingredients that consumers can really easily understand on the label. So those are some of the key trends driving the market at the moment, but also sustainability, the environment, animal welfare. That's driving certain consumption trends. It means that things like packaging are very important now. So if you've got a standard consumer product packed in plastic and you want to get it into a major supermarket, you've probably hit the first barrier, and you probably won't get past that unless you can say it's made from recycled plastic, or this plastic is recyclable, or we've used compostable film in terms of wrapping this product, or it's made from obviously from glass or tin or something which is more easily recyclable. It's a very important aspect of the UK market right now, and still so, even though people are worried about the price of products. I think in terms of our sort of attitude to food in the UK, we're not really known for having a particularly strong culinary identity, if you think of France or Italy, for example, but the manufacturing sector has got this really strong global reputation for quality and innovation, and we're very good at adapting international food cuisine and trends, very strong also in chilled food and private label food. So we're a very food conscious market, a very quality conscious market, and the fact that we don't have our own particularly strong identity, I think, means that we're much more open to products from abroad, whereas some other European markets are much more focused on their home produced products. In terms of retail, the top 4 retailers account for 2/3 of the market, and the top 6 for getting on for 80%. So as I said, it's very centralized, and they all operate nationally. We'll explain a bit further in a few minutes. So that can mean substantial business if you have a national listing. And again, this is unlike some other markets where they're much more regional players. If you're a brand, you have opportunities, especially if you can disrupt a category and you've got strong environmental and natural credentials. So there's been a bit of a roller coaster in the last few years. Before the pandemic, smaller challenger brands really began to make some headway with retailers, because they were saying, you know, we have something which is a far better quality product that consumers really want than the traditional legacy brands who've been on the shelf for decades and more, with palm oil in their ingredient mix, or too much sugar, or highly processed, and so on. So they began to get some headway. And then during the pandemic, the retailers ran a little bit scared, and they basically focused on a lot of their bigger brands and took some of the smaller ones off the shelf because they wanted to ensure regular supply for the shopper. But now that we're out of COVID, they are looking for products which differentiate. So yes, of course, pricing is important right now. Consumers have tight budgets, but also the retailers realize that, inflation won't be here forever. They need to show what makes them different from other retailers. So adopting smaller, innovative brands is one way that they can create a point of difference from their retail competitors. So in that sense, it's with that mindset, I think it's important to think about opportunities in the UK market for yourselves. Private label is very important. So it's way higher than in most markets. So it's in fact 50% or slightly over now of the total retail market. It's been growing faster than brands in the last year, especially as people have become more price conscious. So again, if you're a private label supplier, that could mean opportunities for you. If you're a brand, you need to demonstrate why you're offering something different from private label to the UK. And what we'll talk about now is there are a range of different route to market options. So people generally think about the supermarkets. Obviously, they dominate the overall grocery environment, and we'll explain who's who. But also there are other channels as well. So there are independent retailers, there is a health food channel, there is online and so on. So we'll talk about some of those as well. And they can often be a good place to start because you then build your credentials in the market. You begin to learn, and then you take the lessons that you've learnt and then perhaps progress to bigger retailers. And just a final quick point, as you know, obviously UK has actually exited the EU market, which I think is a shame in very many respects. But I don't want to overplay it because UK customers are looking for suppliers from, yes, of course, they look for suppliers across Europe, but they've always been looking further afield than that anyway. So whether you're in or outside the EU isn't the crucial factor. The most important thing is to offer products that have got something unique and different for the market. Okay, so let's look at the overall food market structure now. As you'd expect, the grocery retail market is large, given the size of our population. So we're, I think, the third biggest grocery market in Europe now. Germany is the biggest. France is slightly bigger than the UK in terms of grocery market, but we're talking about a market of 217 billion pounds. So if you think in a minute or two, we'll take you through the shares of some of the big grocery retailers. So if you think about the size of that total market, you'll begin to realize what level of business each of those retailers does, and then in turn, what that might mean for you as a supplier if you at one point became a national listing in any of those retailers. We're a supermarket environment really in the UK. So some European countries are quite hypermarket focused. We don't really have a strong hypermarket presence in the UK. There are some, but the mainstream outlet, if you like, is the supermarket or superstore, which is, if you like, just a bigger supermarket. Discount stores, they're the type of stores that's been growing the fastest in the last few years. And then obviously a lot of small independent convenience stores. But the discount sector is the one that's been occupying a bigger share of the market. It's still only 18% of the total market, but it's forecast to grow twice the rate of the rest of the grocery market overall in the next 5 years. So again, some of you may have products which are suitable for discounters, and that's worth being aware of that. The top 5 retailers, which we call the multiples, have always dominated the market, but once they were well above 80% of the market, and now we're seeing that actually their share is actually reducing a little bit, so they're below 80% now, and mostly that's because Aldi and Lidl have started to gain some ground on them, and most of the growth that they've had in the last year has been fueled by inflation, which has been very high. So inflation right now in the grocery market in the UK, the last month reached its peak. We hope it's certainly the peak, and it's 17.4%, which is quite staggering, really. So the forecast for inflation overall in the UK are that it will be back down at a level of about 2% by the autumn. But in grocery, it's still very high, 17% in the last month. So Aldi and Lidl have if you like, taken some of the multiples lunch, but the one thing they don't have is online capability. So they didn't really grow much during the pandemic compared with some of the other retailers, and some of the bigger retailers have been reducing the number of products. So that's what I mean by SKU rationalization. So that doesn't mean that there are less opportunities for new suppliers automatically. It's more about just avoiding duplication in the store. So they still want something that's different. But if you're taking a global view and you sort of forget the pandemic, obviously, which was unique at the time, the 3 areas of retailing that are growing fastest are convenience, online, and discounting, whereas the traditional supermarket business has been feeling the pressure. So I'll hand over to Sally now to take you through the leading multiple retail environment for a few slides. Thanks, Sally.
Okay, so if we could have the next slide, we'll start with the multiples that Simon introduced just now. As he said, the share is declining slightly. If you look at the bottom of the slide, they've gone into it from 2021 just over 79% down to 78%, but that is still a massive market. It's still 169 billion pounds, so it's still huge, with Tesco, the top player, being 59 billion pounds worth and over a quarter of the entire grocery retail market in the UK. So an incredibly successful retailer, really. And if we look at the column on the right there, you can see the total grocery sales growth, which, as Simon said, is primarily down to inflation over the last few years, with most of them going up, Morrison's slightly declining, but I'll go into the detail of each one as we go through the next slide. If we could click over now, Simon.
Yeah, sure.
So looking at the individual retailers, if we start with Tesco, which, as we've both said, is clearly the leading UK retailer, it's the size of virtually the number 2 Sainsbury's and Asda combined. They've got almost 1,000 big stores, mainly superstores and supermarkets, plus a range now of convenience stores as well to broaden their reach further. They are the classic mid-market retailer, but because of their size, that mid-market also includes, for example, a mid-market shopper who might be looking in their basket for a few bargains and a few luxuries. And because of their breadth of range, it includes some more premium shoppers who are coming in looking for premium items, which might be sourced under private label, but also under the branded items. They're the classic one-stop shop for a consumer, where they can come in and get everything they need for a week without having to go anywhere else. They appeal to families, couples, singles, and perhaps less so the older shoppers who can find their stores a little bit more overwhelming. Anything to add about Tesco, Simon?
No, I think that's a good summary. They I suppose the difficulty Tesco has is that they're almost fighting against everybody, because they're trying to satisfy every need. So they've got to watch out what the discounters are up to, because they know that their shoppers also shop there. But also, they've got to look over their shoulder at retailers like Waitrose that can offer, obviously, a wider range of specialities. So, but they've been very successful, and they've dominated the market now for 20 or 30 years, and there's no signs of them losing their grip on that.
No, and to further what Simon said, to slightly broaden their appeal, they've changed their strapline from "Every Little Helps," which was really about the value, to helping customers. But they're helping everybody, so helping customers, helping colleagues, helping their communities as part of the mission statement, and helping suppliers as well. They've received a lot of bad press for exploiting suppliers, and they're trying to turn that around into working with suppliers, which is what some of the other supermarkets profess to do for a lot longer. So yeah. Moving on to Sainsbury's, they're very interesting for people looking to import into the UK. Number one, because they're the second largest supermarket, so 15% share of the market, which is still a very large market, a large number of stores. But in particular, because although they're a mid-market retailer, they tend to be top end of the mid-market. So reaching out to consumers who the food values are more important, and who are actually prepared to pay more for healthy, for provenance, for ethically sourced, for products which are not so harmful to the environment. Reflecting that is the fact that there was a leaders fair trade retailer globally. Their strap lines are much more about their product range. So price something new today, making life taste better, live well for less, and helping everyone eat better. So they're a prime target for people who can really come in and offer something different to the market. They like to set themselves apart by having different products to the other retailers. Private label, particularly important to them, and I'm on to it later in the presentation, but their private label range is very broad, and so there are opportunities there for the premium suppliers from around the world, really. Okay. Anything for Sainsbury's, Simon?
No, I think you covered Sainsbury's very well. So
So next week we come to Asda, and they're similar market share to Sainsbury's, but a very different kettle of fish altogether. They're a value proposition appealing to families and people shopping on a budget. An example of that is that they also offer the widest range of non-food items. They're the leading supplier of school uniforms in the UK, for example, clothes, household items as well. Their clothesline brand George. Their line is get the Asda price feeling. So primarily price proposition, but also recognizing that they need people to feel good about the food as well. They are a national retailer, but biased slightly more towards the north of England and away from the London core heartland. Their strategy is everyday low price, which means that rather than running a lot of promotions, they run a consistent price on a set basket throughout the year. So for the family consumer who has a list of say 50 items and buys those 50 items every week, that consumer can pretty much be certain that they will pay the same for that every single week. They have particularly suffered at the hands of the discounters, Aldi and Lidl, because the proposition overlaps a little bit more. And then from there on to Morrison's. Morrison's the fourth position with about just under 10% of the market share. Their share again has been eroded by Aldi, or a key competitor, and again similar to Asda, but even more so. They have their heartland is in the north of England. The factor that sets them apart really is that they're vertically integrated. So they own many of their own suppliers in meat, fish and produce, for example. And their concept in store, they've got a concept called Market Street, where if you walk into the store, there are areas of the store set up for example, fresh fish, fresh meat, fresh fruit and veg, and bread, which look like the smaller high street stores of the past. So look like a fishmonger's, look like a proper butcher's, looks like a greengrocer's or a bakery. Their strap lines, fresh choice for you, eat fresh, pay less. Morrison's makes it, so emphasising that. Anything to add, Simon, about those two?
No, I think that's okay. A good summary. I think all the time we're talking about each retailer, we then want to bring the discussion back to your, or the thinking process back to you yourselves, and I think about which could be a potentially good fit for you. Probably the next one we're going to talk about could be a good fit for several of you, I think, in terms of the retail environment. So
before I move on to Waitrose, actually one point that I was going to say earlier is the UK is a very broad-based population in terms of ethnicities, and 25% of the population would classify themselves as not white British. And that's from a melting pot of other cultures, and the leading supplier to those cultures is actually Asda. They have set aisles which cater for example, Indian, Chinese, Caribbean, Polish, and even now Ukrainian consumers. And so whilst you might not immediately earmark Asda as being a top target for Serbia and other Balkan markets, perhaps there is a market there within those speciality sectors that's worth considering.
Yeah,
and again, just before we flip to Waitrose, we haven't covered Co-op, which although not one of the multiples is classified as generally as a big multiple retailer, is one of the top 6, and they tend to be a convenience retailer with lots of small stores throughout the country. Most of them only stock a small range, but occasionally they like to have something which is different regionally to other multiples. And they've particularly got an emphasis on fair trade. So if you're operating in that sort of arena, occasionally Co-op can be worth considering.
Yeah.
So then on to Waitrose. Waitrose has got just under 5% share of the market, but it's very important for people looking to enter the market because they operate at the other end and they appeal to people that are interested in their food. So whether they classify themselves as a foodie who just love food in general, people who like cooking, people who are affluent and can afford to buy quality and provenance, and people that are looking for new experiences, for food experiences, for something different. And I think Waitrose has the biggest percentage of their range of being products which are not available elsewhere in any other retailers. So a really good supplier for authentic specialities.
Just on that point to chip in, an example I sometimes give to reinforce that is the Spanish sausage chorizo. If you want to buy chorizo sausage, you can buy it in all the supermarkets, but if you go to Tesco, you get two options. You get standard chorizo, or you get extra spicy chorizo. So basically, you know, that's your choice for Spanish chorizo sausage in Tesco. If you go to Waitrose, you've got 27 different items of chorizo. So you've got sliced chorizo, whole rings of chorizo, you know, single origin chorizo from particular parts of Spain, etc., etc. So that, if you like, that one example shows the sort of the different approach to authentic specialities from a Tesco on the one hand, who's trying to appeal to everybody, and a Waitrose on the other.
Yeah, that's totally right. Yes, I experienced that yesterday myself. I was looking for a premium bottle of gin. Aldi had two types of gin, and I went to Waitrose, and they must have had about 30.
Yeah,
so exactly right. And their slogan, food to feel good about, and everybody deserves Waitrose. That latter one, trying to reach out to a broader range of consumers. And I think people that primarily shop in one of the other retailers will go to Waitrose if they're after something specific for a recipe, or if they're after a luxury, or if they're after a gifting product. And then next one.
The only thing I'd add on Waitrose is also private label is even more important for them than it is for some of the other retailers. So 55% of their total sales are actually own label foods, a lot of it chilled foods, convenience foods, and so on. And they're competing with Marks and Spencer, that will be familiar with many of you, I think, and Ocado, which is an online retailer we'll talk more about in a second, at the sort of top end of the market.
So we've talked a little bit about Aldi and Lidl. They've clearly been the success factors of the British market in the recent years. But I think what we haven't covered is that their strategy is they have the ongoing lines as well as the special buys, and some of those special buys where they commit to buying a certain quantity and selling them on a when it's wig basis. When it's gone. Some of those are very much more premium and are very much more authentic. They will run, for example, an Italian week or a Greek week, and the lines of those which sell really well can then become part of their main ongoing listings. For example, a range of curry sauces, premium curry sauces with a separate pot of spices that you fry the protein in first, and some mango chutneys. They became a special buy for about 4 or 5 years, and now some of those products have made it into the ongoing mainstream range. And from that success story in Lidl, the manufacturer of those products was able to create an example of how the products had been received in the UK market, which then led to listings in other retailers. So it can be a good place to start.
Yeah.
Anything to add there, Simon?
Yeah, I think, and then the other thing about discounters is people, sometimes a bit dismissive of them because of their reputation. But I think Sally makes a very good point about special buys and opportunities to get into the full mainstream range that way. Also, they're the only retailers who are really increasing their store numbers, so that they're the ones growing. So every Aldi or Lidl supplier in the UK will be building their sales quite nicely, purely on the basis of the fact Aldi and Lidl are opening new outlets all the time, and they've got quite aggressive expansion plans to keep up those numbers. Whereas the bigger retailers are pretty much static. They're investing more in stores in city centres and town centres, but the mainstream supermarkets are pretty much flat in terms of expansion. So that's another point to bear in mind, I think.
On top of that, those stores are often next door to a premium retailer, so either right next door to a Waitrose or right next door to an M&S, so that the shoppers will park in one car park and then do a bit of shopping in each. So buy the bulk of their shopping and perhaps a few luxuries from Lidl or Aldi, and then anything they can't get there, they'll pop next door to Waitrose or Lidl to get. And equally, the more affluent shopper who buys their main shop in Waitrose will then pop across to Aldi or Lidl too.
Yeah, exactly that. Why spend 80 pence for your bag of carrots at Waitrose when the same carrots are 40 pence at Aldi? But maybe you bought your chorizo already from Waitrose, so you're happy with that. Okay, let me just briefly mention private label. I won't go into everything on private label. You've already got the message how important it is in the UK market, but just to sort of visualize this, we just look at one retailer and how they handle private label. So traditionally, private label is just seen as a basic version of branded items. In the UK, it's been much more sophisticated than that for many years, really. So Sainsbury's, it's now around 51% of their sales. They've got a standard range called By Sainsbury's, simply, which has got about 7,000 different lines. But then you've got lots of other private label under Sainsbury's as well. So they've got, if you like, their discounter version called Basics, which are entry-level products, and you can see from the packaging looks a little bit more basic for those. Their By Sainsbury's is their core brand. Taste the Difference, which do look very premium, and they are premium, is very much the high-end private label. So they're competing with bigger brands and offering what they would like to see as restaurant quality food and drink. And then focusing on health, Be Good to Yourself has been a very successful Sainsbury's own label brand. So consumers buying that brand know that, you know, every product is going to have less than 3% fat automatically, and a healthy ingredient lineup. So that's quite a good offer. My Goodness being another one, free from a special range of free from products where Sainsbury's is very strong. So Organic for its organic range. So private label is an opportunity. It's not just about lowest cost prices. It's also about more premium products, and it could be an opportunity again for some of you who consider private label as an opportunity to work with these retailers. It's a big part of their business, and they're always interested to get into dialogue with producers who can offer some solution to new areas of private label, and they're always going into more areas as brands develop categories, or also to compete with some of their existing suppliers. So that's worth thinking about.
It's worth saying that the other retailers will have similar ranges of private labels, although the percentage of products within each one will vary according to their profile. So Tesco will have a similar spectrum to Sainsbury's.
Exactly that, yes. Tesco's version of Taste the Difference is called Tesco Finest, and it's in black packaging mostly, so it looks super premium. In fact, it will look a lot more premium than many of the brands on the shelf next to it.
Asda extra special too.
Yeah, indeed.
Morrison's the best.
Yeah, Morrison's the best. Yes, and then just away from the bigger retailers now, there's a range of different specialist retailers as well. So if you're just thinking about volume, then of course the big multiples, the supermarkets, can give you that volume, but there are lots of independent retailers. If your products are suitable for delicatessens and independent food stores, then traditionally they would buy their stock from distributors or wholesalers who specifically sell into those markets, like Cotswold Fair. I know who one of you has done business with in the past, for example, supply that part of the market. You've then got the prestigious department stores. So they all have food halls. Harrods Food Hall is globally known. The only issue with Harrods is that you've got to be seriously ultra premium, because they don't want any products at Harrods that you could also potentially see in Selfridges or Harvey Nichols. They want to be seen almost in a completely different planet. Just to give one example of a product we successfully sold into Harrods was a premium Nespresso style coffee capsule brand called Heyman, and these coffees were freshly roasted, and they were from the leading sort of coffee regions of the world, including Jamaica Blue Mountain, and a small box of 9 capsules sold at Harrods, the retail selling price was £59 for nine coffee capsules. The selling in price to Harrods was something like £29. So Harrods were making a very substantial margin on that. But it just shows what the Harrods consumer might be prepared to pay for something they believe is unique. And if you compare that with Nespresso coffee capsules, they would traditionally sell for about £3 for 10, as opposed to £59 for 9. So you can see what level of premium Harrods is sometimes operating at. But Selfridges and Harvey Nichols are also opportunities, particularly Selfridges, because it has tourist visitors, but it also has a lot of traffic from Londoners and affluent office workers. And it's quite often used as a venue to launch a brand for a limited period. So you get on the shelf there, maybe you're only there for 3 to 6 months before you go somewhere else in the market, but people notice you. They're looking for innovation and quality, and it can be a good place to announce your presence on the market, if you like. There's a wide range of other outlets. I'm just going to mention 2 here to show you different opportunities. So Costco, which is actually by definition a wholesaler, mostly known for its presence in the US market. It's got 28 warehouses in the UK, and food and drink are very important items within it. They have very low margins as a retailer, if you like, and a very high rate of sale. So if you've got high quality products, particularly if they're in larger pack sizes or in multi-packs, sometimes it can actually work as a very interesting outlet for premium products. So people tend to people use it as a wholesaler if they've got their own food service businesses or own independent retail businesses, but also it's used by anybody who has their own business. You could be a lawyer or a doctor, just as much as a food service business, and shop at Costco looking for interesting premium products. So it's the Waitrose and Marks and Spencer's shopper who often goes to Costco, and it's an outlet which is often forgotten about because it's a little bit below the radar, but it can offer some interesting volume business. And another type of business altogether is Boots, which is known as being a chemist chain, but it's also got quite a lot of healthy food and drink, especially for food on the go, for the lunchtime markets, again for office workers and for tourists. It's always at airports and and travel destinations. So again, if you've got products that suit that target audience, they could be someone to think about as well. And then if we look at health and natural channel more specifically, we don't have many chains of health food stores in the UK. In fact, there's only really one that's national, and that's Holland and Barrett, which has over 700 stores now. So they offer everything from sort of protein shakes to vitamins and supplements and so on, but also healthier food and drink. So a lot of dried fruit and nuts, but a lot of innovative plant-based snacks and so on as well, and drinks. It's mostly ambient food and drink, but they are now putting more emphasis on chilled and frozen foods as well. Very much driven by promotion activity. They're very hungry for margins. We're going to talk about margins in the second part of this session, and they expect a lot of marketing spend as well. But they do have that estate across the country of 700 plus stores. Planet Organic is a different scale altogether. It's just focused on organic food and drink, and it's only based in London. So they've got 14 stores now. They're slightly expanding their stores, and it's not just organic food and drink. It is mostly organic, but they can't source organic for every item that they want. So natural foods as well as organic foods. And again, if you are wanting to supply them, you need to work through wholesalers, but they're also now planning to develop their own warehousing facilities. So distributors and wholesalers would normally sell into those Planet Organic stores in London. Whole Foods is another example of a London-focused operation. It's absolutely enormous in the States, about 500 stores now. much smaller in the UK, only 7, but it's the sort of trend leader in terms of natural, healthy, plant-based brands. And a lot of challenger brands would, their ideal first step into the market would be to get a listing in Whole Foods. The good thing is that they do stock a wide number of brands, so they don't have the same mentality as a supermarket who want, you know, somewhere between 2 and 4 brands maybe for each category, rather than a plethora of different brands. They want to create some theatre. They want to create some, you know, to show variety and differentiation. And so Whole Foods can be an interesting starting point, even though there are a limited number of stores. But if you're successful there, that can then help you build a case perhaps for a listing in mainstream supermarkets. And then the wider health food channel, there's lots of independent health food stores. Mostly they don't have chilled or frozen capability. It's just ambient products. And to get into those, you need to work with one of the national health food wholesalers. And in fact, there's been a lot of consolidation going on lately. We've had a couple of national wholesalers going into liquidation, but there's one major one left called CLF. And there are a number of regional wholesalers serving different parts of the UK. So that's the route into the health food channel in the UK. And then of course there's online as well. So online peaked very much during the pandemic. So online share of total grocery was over 15% just a couple of years ago now. It's dropped a bit now. It's 12.6, dropped a little bit more than that in the last month or so, but it's still pretty significant. So even before the pandemic, the UK, 7% of grocery sales were online sales in the UK, which is way higher than most other countries in the world, to be quite honest. Only France was a similar level, but France was much more about click and collect, whereas in the UK, it's all about home delivery. So most British consumers are now shopping online for grocery, for at least part of their shopping needs. And even older consumers are doing that now. A lot of them got that habit during COVID. Maybe they're helped by their families. Amazon is quite an important outlet. A lot of publicity lately about Amazon making redundancies and so on, but they are a pretty efficient and effective online retail business. In grocery, it's relatively unimportant for them compared with electronics and books and so on, but it's growing fast, and a lot of brands are now selling on Amazon, and that can be a very good way, again, a first step into the market to start developing your sales. People are happy to buy food and drink from Amazon and doing that increasingly. And again, focusing on one particular retailer in online grocery, Ocado is worth looking at. They've got about 2% of the total grocery market, which may not sound a lot, but remember how big the grocery market is. It's 217 billion. And they're a technology company. They have robotic warehouses which source and pack products and deliver them to consumers, and they sell that technology to other retailers around the world, like Casino and Kroger in the States and so on and so forth. But they also operate just like a regular supermarket, except they don't have any stores. And one of the big advantages they have is how many products they list. So they list nearly 60,000 different products now, which is about twice what Tesco would list. So they're not limited by physical shelf space. Of course, there's warehouse space, but they're not limited in the same way that each store limits how much shelf space for certain categories. So they are very interested in having products which aren't available in other supermarkets. Again, so this could be an interesting opportunity for Western Balkan exporters. They're very hot on organic products and free from and vegan products. They tend to have more of those than other retailers. And their shopper profile is quite upmarket. So they're similar types of people shop on Ocado as they do at Waitrose. So they tend to have, higher income. They're interested in a variety of different food and drinks. And they also have a tie-up now with Marks and Spencer. So you can buy Marks and Spencer own label food and drink through Ocado. Great for Marks and Spencer because it gives them an online delivery option, which they didn't have before. And it's great for Ocado because they expand their range with a popular range of Marks and Spencer food and drink. So Ocado can be an interesting route to market for the first time exporter to the UK. It also can potentially give you national exposure because Ocado delivers to everywhere in the UK, not just London and the Southeast. And finally, just to touch on food service, just this slide shows you the complexity of the food service market. But again, if you've got products which are specifically designed for food service, it could be the retail, travel and leisure market. It could be maybe hotels and restaurants, or the contract catering sector. There are big market, big opportunities there. We won't have time to go into all of that now, but again, I'm just flagging that as an opportunity. There are, of course, specialist wholesalers who deal with the food service market. The key trends, I guess, across food service in general are value-driven food and drink, fast food operators offering convenient food, dark kitchens, in other words, kitchens who are supplying just home delivery, and experiential dining. Those are some of the key trends going on in food service right now. They've bounced back since the pandemic. Obviously, a lot of food service was shut down during that time period, but now they've come back, and the growth level is more or less back where it was pre-pandemic, and accelerating now to have a bit more growth in 2023. Perhaps they won't grow as fast as they hope because of the cost of living crisis. So some people will be eating out a little bit less and maybe buying their food from retail instead, which is an opportunity for retailers to replace some of those meals. But the two leading wholesalers are Brakes and Bid Food. And then you've got independents like Service by Booker, Cash and Carry, and a number of regional food service suppliers, including Caterforce, Country Range and Fairway. And I think we'll be working together with the British Soviet Chamber of Commerce to create a guide to the UK market. So we'll have more information about some of these suppliers and independents and wholesalers and distributors in that, if you're interested. So again, if you're taking a global view, don't worry about looking at all these numbers at once, but it's really just to point out which parts of the market are going to grow most over the next 5 years. And it's basically discounters probably increasing their share of the grocery market more than anybody else and growing faster than anybody else, but online also close behind, and convenience growing, while hypermarkets and supermarkets will be plodding along. They'll still account for the large share of business, but not growing as fast as some of these other channels. Just go back one because you missed one. Yeah, so just talking about how you reach, sorry, this keeps jumping, different parts of the market. Clearly, one of the thought processes will be operating through a distributor for the market. If you're working with a traditional importer distributor, they will typically take title to the product and usually then assume all the responsibility for warehousing and logistics as well as sales. So that would be, if you like, what we'd call a full service importer distributor. But there are lots of versions of the distributor model, if you like. And I think it's very important that you're aware of what the specific skill set and experience of any importer is before you sign any deal. Some, for example, don't have their own warehousing at all. They outsource that. Some are just really logistics specialists rather than sales experts. So in other words, you might need additional outsourced sales expertise. Some of the larger distributors are quite strong in terms of marketing and brand building, but I would say most distributors, that isn't really their main strength, and they will work sometimes in collaboration with people like ourselves, or with promotions and PR and social media agencies who are more specifically skilled in those areas of activity. Absolutely paramount is to to look at what their channel expertise is and the degree of focus as well. So some distributors are very effective at selling into the bigger supermarket chains, multiple retailers, but many are much more focused on the independent and specialty channel. They may have some contacts in multiple retail, but they all have their comfort zones and areas of strength and expertise. So when you think about the UK market, it's important to think, where do I think my products could sit in the market? And then think, how do I reach that part of the market? And which distributors perhaps can help me reach that part of the market? And some distributors, most of them will cover, in theory, customers across the country, but some may not cover certain channels so well. So it's important to think about, how you prioritize different parts of the market and who therefore is best suited to working with you. So importers, if you're selling to a distributor and you want to sell into the mainstream supermarket channel and the health food channel, a distributor will probably sell directly into Tesco, but they may also need to then sell into wholesalers to reach independent health food stores. So don't just think one distributor is going to be the solution to have direct contact with everyone you want to sell to in the market. So if you do want to sell into independent health food stores, the only option is to work with those wholesalers who supply those stores. The bigger distributors wouldn't have the capability to supply them direct, so they would then have to sell into a wholesaler who in turn sells into the health food store. I will explain in the second part of this session about how the margin structure works between them all. What degree of focus you're going to get from your partner is also important. So how much are they really going to push your range, or are they just going to store your range and wait for orders to come in? Are you just going to be a few more lines on the long catalogue of products that are listed in a wholesaler's catalogue, or are you going to be a prime brand amongst 7 or 8 other ones that they're really going to push for you? So that's important to understand. And then I think at the outset it's important, find the right partner, take your time in doing so, and put a clear plan together so that you understand who's supposed to do what. Many relationships founder because there's a misunderstanding, or there are expectations haven't been managed about who's supposed to do what in the relationship, who's investing in marketing, is it being shared, is it being borne by the producer, is the distributor doing it just himself? So it's important to have a clear plan, what you're hoping to achieve together, and who takes responsibility for what parts of the overall exercise. Typically, the margin for distributors will be around 25%, but some of them might also say, well, look, we're working hard to build your business. So in the first year, we would expect you to pay us a retainer of a certain amount per month, because we need to devote a certain chunk of our sales force into this activity before we're starting to get revenue from your brand over a period of time. So there's no one size fits all. The most important thing is just be clear about what your own objectives are, what you really want to achieve, and then find a partner who's attuned to that. So just to conclude from this part of the exercise so far, because I think we're exactly an hour in from when we started, just a few key reminders. First of all, UK market's big, it's attractive, looking out for innovation, but also authentic specialities, and there are lots of different ways of approaching the UK market. Supermarket chains, as we call them, the multiples, they offer the potential of volume and certainly for brands. But if you're anything other than a very large imported brand, it will normally be via distributor that you would need to sell into those mainstream supermarket chains. And they offer opportunity if you're a private label supplier as well. So normally that would be direct into the retailer. There are sometimes sourcing partners who work with retailers to supply private label, but normally it would be buying direct from the retailer. Sometimes that's organized via a tender process. So especially if it's a big category of private label, then they will organize a tender every 2 to 3 years, and getting on that tender list is the way to get your offer to that retailer. You've also got discounters, and as Sally highlighted, those special buys can be a big opportunity, seasonal offers, often premium food, and otherwise, in terms of a traditional own label opportunity in response to a tender, in much the same way as the bigger retailers, where they will come out with a very clear specification on the type of product, and they're looking for the best priced provider, essentially. At the other end of the market, you then got the department store food halls, the farm shops, the garden centres, you've got online, and artisan specialty food items, which many of you will be in the category of, could have good opportunities in those types of outlets. And again, they will be supplied by distributors and wholesalers who focus on those types of outlets. Health and natural channel, if that's where your products lie. You've got stores, but you've also got quite a lot of online websites in that sphere, and you've got specialist wholesalers who supply them. Food service, again, a big channel, but it's very fragmented, so it's got its own national and local wholesalers. So I think the key message for all of you at this stage is examine the market, and when I say examine the market, use the opportunity when you're over in the UK to visit stores as much as you can. I'm not sure whether there's time in your program to do some organized store visits. If so, we can help with that. But even if you're in and out of the exhibition, just take every opportunity you can to see what's going on in the market. Think about where your range could fit in the market. Which channels, which types of customer do you see a good fit for your product range? And then identify that route to market and plan accordingly to address it. So that's what we wanted to cover in the first part of the session today. Very happy to answer any immediate questions you might have. And then I think the plan is to have a 5-minute break, and then we continue with the second part of the session.
Simon, I can see there's one question already on the question and answer, which I would be happy to answer if you like.
Please, yeah. Sally, go ahead, please.
Okay, so question from Richard Robinson. How much independence do Aldi UK and Lidl UK have from their German parents? Are the buyers UK based? So the two chains have been slightly different. Aldi have had a UK buying team for a long time now, and with a large range of autonomy from the German parent. So listing ranges just for the UK and sorting out their assortments and their ranging decisions just for the UK separately. Although for the last 3 years, they have just had a global sourcing office, I think, don't quote me, I think based in Salzburg, where they buy items that they were called commodity items for global sourcing, so to be listed in several markets. And I think pasta and oils are two good examples of that. Lidl have been a little bit the other way around. They have mainly sourced through Germany until really recently. Last year they set up a UK buying office for the first time, and I think they've got about 8 buyers working out of there now, looking at buying decisions for the UK market only. So hopefully that answers your question, Richard.
So the following section, first of all, this will probably take half as long as the first time, so that's the good news. Don't think you'll be here forever. But we wanted to talk about the process of coming up with pricing and how the commercials work for the UK market. So hopefully we can give you a few hints about that in the next 20 minutes, half an hour or so. I guess the first thing, step one, is the cost of your product. It's important to work out roughly what the cost of that product would be delivered to the UK. You'll have a view about what your minimum order quantities will be as well. And the third thing you need to do, obviously, is to understand what UK pricing is all about, and how your product range could maybe fit into what you can see in the UK environment. So I put an example up on the screen here, and it might be quite small for you to follow in detail. But this is an example from Ocado, which was the if you've been paying attention, you will remember is the online retailer from the opening session. So Ocado's website lists every possible food and drink category, and I've chosen to do a search on honey in this particular case, because I know that may cover at least one of the categories that that some of you are involved with. And I've just printed out a part of the screen that you can see when you search for honey. So there are quite a number of different honey products listed, and you can search by runny honey, by organic honey, by set honey, different types of honey as well. You can also search by brand. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can see a number of brands are being listed, and you can see which ones are organic as well, organic options. You can select for different honey that is on offer at a special price or on promotion versus other ones. But I just wanted to help you orientate yourselves thinking about pricing for the UK, because this is something you can do from wherever you are. You don't need to be in the UK to do this. So you will see a list of products. You will be able to click on any item and find out more information about ingredients or the packaging, for example, but we won't go into that now. The most important thing is to obviously look at the price of the sales item, but also you'll see, for example, I'm looking at the one in the top left-hand corner, the Rouse organic honey. So you will see that the price is, you can see the packaging size, 340 grams. You'll see that the regular price is £3.50 for that item, but it's on promotion. So it's on promotion at £3. And you'll then see beneath that a calculation of the price per 100 grams. So again, this can help you make an instant comparison to your products. You can see what you sell your products at, price per 100 grams, and compare it with any other item listed here. If you're a regular honey producer, you can compare with regular honey versus organic honey in terms of pricing. You might also want to focus on particular specialty honeys or particular regional honeys. So here, for example, I can see in the third row, in the bottom left, this is a Greek honey in particular. So you can see what the pricing is like for a honey of a particular national origin, for example. So there's a whole interesting data bank of information that you can use just by searching online. You can do the same thing with regular supermarket chains like Tesco and and Sainsbury's, sorry. Tesco.com, Sainsbury's.co.uk, Ocado.com. These are all worth looking at. Ocado I've chosen because it's probably got the widest range of anybody, and it would include certainly more premium and specialty products than regular supermarkets. So it might be a good place to start if you're a Western Balkan exporter of specialty quality products, as I think you all are.
Probably worth saying that it's something worth saying before you go into step 2, that's something that we quite often do for potential suppliers, isn't it? Because it is, although you can do it for online, it is quite complex and laborious, and compiling the results into a meaningful format across different multiples is quite difficult. Whereas it's easy for us because we can just go out to the stores and take nice photos and write down all the prices.
That's right, exactly that. And in fact, the best thing to do, while you can get an indication that way, and it's a helpful start, but it's a far better thing is to visit the market and visit stores, or as Sally was saying, use the services of someone who's locally based, like ourselves or somebody else, because that way you'll get the pricing information, but you'll get a lot more insights as well. So you'll be able to see how much space is there available for these types of products on the fixture, for example. What's the split of brands and own label? Does it look like it's a category that's very open to new brands, or is it almost all own label on the shelf and therefore perhaps less of an opportunity? Are any brands dominant? So in honey, Rouse honey is a fairly strong brand, but there's quite a diverse range of different brands, for example. So that can help you understand opportunities. Can you see organic products there? So in some categories, if you had an organic product, maybe there aren't organic options. So that might give you an idea, oh, maybe we could sell our organic products. It doesn't look like they've got one. And the other important thing is that if you're not selling to supermarkets primarily, you're selling to smaller stores or food halls or high-end stores, you can't really see what they've got online. So you have to sort of visit the market and see what's on offer there. But that's an important thing to do. So look at the price, but also look at the price per 100 grams, clearly. Use supermarkets' own websites and specialist online shops. And then it's important to calculate the average price for the category. So what's the average price and what's the range of different pricing there? So if you look at the most premium products, first of all, how much do they sell for? That's important, because maybe you're going to be competing against more premium products, but also what's justifying that premium price? Just saying we're a nice honey from the forests of wherever may not be enough, because that's what other people are saying. So you've got to think about what justifies the price if it's a premium product. If it's organic, again, you might be thinking, well, organic products look typically 30% more expensive than regular products, for example. How do brands pricing compare with own label pricing? And does it look like specialist products, including internationally sourced products, are also part of this mix? So these are all things that insights that you might want to take by having some analysis of the market carried out for you and doing some initial probing yourself. And the whole point of this is really, where could my product sit? So coming to the UK is not just about, let's say, finding a distributor. It's really about understanding where you think your products could fit and how you can reach those routes to market. Then if we talk about margins, it's all very well understanding what the retail price is, but obviously you need to understand what the makeup of that retail price is as well. So how to understand margins? Well, the very first important factor, but sometimes overlooked, is what about your own margins? So, first of all, what contribution do you need to make on your products if you're selling them anywhere, whether it's in your home market or in exports? And what flexibility have you got on that? Is there a minimum contribution that you need, or are you prepared to make a very, very small contribution because you want to start your business somewhere? You'll need to think about making some allowance for marketing. So again, maybe you generally do include something, so you've got some monies for marketing in the price that you're quoting to customers and distributors. And obviously you need to understand who takes what margin in the total supply chain. Once you've done that, you can then compare what your retail selling price could look like with potential competition. And you can then see, does this look about right? Could it work? Will I be at a premium to the existing market? Am I 3 times the price of competitors? That could create a problem. Or does it look like I could have an opportunity here? You'll be able to make that judgment. So how do you calculate those margins? Well, we mentioned earlier on that distributors will typically want to make a margin of around 25%. Sometimes it can be lower than that, 20% maybe, but work on about 25% that they sell to retail. If wholesalers are involved, then they will also expect a similar level to that. So 25% might be typical. It can be lower. So we worked with a wholesaler to recently list a brand in Planet Organic, a quinoa brand, and Sally and the wholesaler's margin in that case was 19%. So that's a little bit lower, but it was only dealing with a handful of stores. On the other hand, they can want to charge more. So sometimes they will want to have a 30% margin because they're saying they're being much more proactive for a certain number of exclusive brands in their portfolio, rather than the whole shopping list of brands that they operate. So it varies, but typically it's similar to distributors. And then you've got supermarkets themselves, who, again, it varies. So you find retailers like Asda and Morrison's who are more cost focused, maybe having slightly lower margins than some of the other retailers. And it also varies by categories. So each buyer will have a margin target for his or her total category that they want to be hitting all the time. So if you're trying to sell your products and you're coming in below their average margin, then they need to have a very good reason why they're going to list you. And if you're going above their average margin, that's more encouraging for them. But in terms of calculation, you probably want to assume about 40% for the retailer. Anything you'd add on that, Sally?
I'd have discounters, I think, which again can be slightly towards the lower end,
yes,
but more in the 30s than in the 40s.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone like Costco tends to be around 20 or 22%. So there's a bit more scope there if you're dealing with those. But the traditional retailers probably allow for 40%, can be as high as the high 40%, getting towards 50%. But as on an average basis, 40% is a good starting point. If you're then selling into independents or small chains, they're typically around 30%. So if you're selling, for example, via a wholesaler, you might need to assume 25% for the wholesaler and 30% for the independent retailer. So a total margin of 55%. Some work on much higher rates. So Holland and Barrett, they would expect about 55%. So they're very greedy for margin if you're selling into that particular store. And if you're selling into food halls like Harrods or Selfridges, they would normally want absolute minimum of that level up to about 70% sometimes. So I mentioned that earlier example of Harrods. So they want very large margins, but they believe there's a lot more elasticity in the price that they sell to consumers.
Sometimes the suppliers view Harrods and Selfridges as a zero-cost marketing exercise rather than a profit-making source in its own right. A lot of the influencers will visit those sorts of stores, and so you can get some PR from it. Yeah,
absolutely right. And they're never going to be a volume sales operation, even if you make a reasonable contribution on your sales via Selfridges or Harrods. The fact they've only really got, I mean, Selfridges has more than one store, but one main store really in London. There's a limit to how much you can sell in that sort of a store, but it's a nice PR platform for you potentially. And the other important thing to be aware of is VAT. And again, this isn't a session all about VAT, and we can talk more about this in the guide. But when you are comparing price, you need to understand whether VAT is included or it isn't. And the standard rate of VAT is 20% in the UK. There isn't a different rate for food and drink. Some countries have different rates for food and different rates for general VAT. But VAT is only chargeable on some food and drink products and not all products. So as a general guideline, if a product is a non-essential product, perhaps an indulgent or a luxury item, VAT tends to apply. Whereas if it's a more mainstream bread, milk, meat, fresh fruit and vegetables and so on, then VAT doesn't apply. So some examples here of where you would include VAT. So alcohol, for example, confectionery, biscuits, but interestingly not cakes. So some biscuits that look a bit like a cake manage to avoid VAT, and the definition is rather peculiar, but they say that what's the difference between a biscuit and a cake? Well, according to the government who make these VAT rules, the difference is that a biscuit is something which goes soft after a period of time, and a cake is something that goes hard if you leave it for too long. So that's how you work out if something's a cake or a biscuit. And if it's a cake, it manages to avoid having VAT. And if it's a biscuit, it has VAT. So it's a little bit quirky, this whole scenario. But it would include soft drinks, and that does include fruit juices. So I know some of you are involved in fruit juices, for example. So they would, even though they're in brackets, in quote marks, sort of a healthy product, they would actually attract VAT, as well as other items like snacks and ice cream. So that's something to be aware of when you're doing your calculations. And again, if you're working in a sector which does attract VAT, and you're comparing your products against competitors, you need to think about the selling price, including VAT. In other words, subtract 20% off that selling price to find out what the retail price would be without VAT, and compare it with your own. And the other factor to take into account, we've got a separate webinar which will cover some of the aspects on this in a bit more detail. But marketing and trade promotion, you'll need to make some allowance in your costings for some expenditure here. So obviously what you spend on marketing is totally up to you in terms of your brand. But when you're working with the trade in the UK, they will automatically expect you to be spending some promotional money with them as a condition really of working with them. So it's not something really which is optional. So distributors and retailers, essentially what they want to know is, okay, well, why is anyone going to buy the product, and how are you going to make sure that you build awareness for the product? So you will need to, if you're selling to a multiple retailer, you would normally automatically need to do a launch promotion, which might have 20-25% off for 3 or 4 weeks, and maybe another 2 or 3 promotion periods over the year. So in other words, you need to start thinking, well, okay, maybe 12 weeks of 52, I'm going to be on promotion, so I need to be calculating a lower return on my product sales for that time period. Some distributors welcome having some free stock or reduced price stock or something like that to start the relationship going. If you're an individual wholesaler, you would normally expect the supplier to pay for a couple of adverts to promote you in a catalog. So that's where they try and make some money from you in terms of advertising and marketing investment. So you need to build a little bit in your pricing to ensure that you can support that to a certain extent. And I think as a general message, you should probably be prepared to invest more in your first year to create interest and then build a sales platform for future years. So I think many people, when they're exporting, don't expect to make money in year one, maybe even lose money in the first year, but obviously start to build the platform which can then help you to grow your business over a period of time. That was it. That was a quick run through on some of the aspects of commercials and pricing, but we'd be very happy to answer any of your further questions on the subject or any of the topics that we discussed in the first half of the webinar.
Well, thank you very much, Simon. Thank you, Sally. It seems we don't have any questions at the moment, but it has been already 1 hour, 35 minutes. I suppose people are a little bit tired, but doesn't stop them. We'll have another session next week. I believe is 14th or 13th. We have 2 more.
It's on Monday, in fact.
It's on Monday, so they can prepare, and I would like them to prepare as many as possible to use this great opportunity before they come to IFE. Most of them, they will be traveling next week, Friday, Saturday, and IFE starts on Monday. May I ask, because I don't keep any longer, maybe another few minutes, Simon. So for example, we have exhibitors such as a very interesting hummus, very organic, also very, very lovely. Basket, who you know, and they're very interesting biscuits. I would say type of honey with honey mixed with, God, I forgot, sorry, I forgot the word. Oh God, because I'm probably tired. This has been a very busy time. Let me see what we have. Cold pressed, interesting juices, very organic, vegan free, all free. There is another one juice. Let me see what some interesting biscuits, another biscuits. So jams, which are kind of 80% of fruit. They don't use additives. So as you can see, Simon, truffles. We have interesting truffles coming. which usually people wouldn't assume the Western Balkans, such as Serbia or Bosnia,
Yeah, absolutely,
would have it, white and black. They would also think Italian, but they are coming. So when you have this kind of very diversified portfolio of the premium food, where the UK market doesn't know much about it, maybe for one, not all of them, what would be the right way for them to prepare themselves and to be, I mean, we are preparing them, but to understand about this market when they talk, and what would be the right road to the market from your experience?
Well, I think that for most, obviously the situation is going to be different for each individual producer. I suppose the one thing they probably mostly have in common is that they are specialty artisan. Several of them are obviously clearly organic products, so they're going to fit into the, you know, I don't think the big supermarket chains should be their primary target. That's not to say that in future some of them may not have opportunities to sell in those stores, but it's probably going to be more effective to work in the more independent channel, in the health and natural channel in particular. Some of the stores like Whole Foods or Planet Organic may be the most suitable ones. So the issue would be helping them to find ways to sell into those stores and find the right partners who can help them to do that. So distributors and wholesalers who deal with that part of the market. So I guess that's a generic comment about the whole range of producers, but I would stress the importance of each producer really understanding what they have to offer in the market compared with what's on the shelf already and in different types of stores. So there could well be opportunities in department store food halls, in independent stores, health and natural stores, but they should also look at the mainstream market. They should look online, consider what the competition is like, how they're different, how they can maybe do something better than what they're seeing in the UK at present, whether their pricing would indeed fit. So I think it's important not to jump to conclusions, and obviously happy to have some individual chats with any of those producers during the show to hopefully steer them further. But I think at the outset it's important, I would advise everyone to keep an open mind about the opportunities. As Sally pointed out, it could be that one or two might have opportunities in special buys with discounters, which would probably be not the first thing you would necessarily think of doing, but that might work with a cold pressed juice, for example. Who knows? With all sorts of different types of products. So that would be my overriding message and advice, I think, at this stage for companies.
I would also, to add to that, say to think about the pre-launch process as well. Make sure that the packaging is right for the UK market, that it communicates your points of difference from products already out there, and think about how you're going to get your product. Think about marketing again in terms of, are you going to do social media? Are you looking at influencers? Are you going to live food shows? Are you going to do sampling within the stores? Are you going to do leaflets, recipes to educate the British consumer onto what is so special about your product and how they use it, and not just buy it for the first time, but keep on using it?
Yeah, I think that's very good advice. Getting across how you use the product. I think a lot of producers assume, they work on the assumption that everybody understands their product and how to use it, but actually you can really bring it to life by demonstrating what eating occasions it works, how you can use it. Do you mix it with anything else? Does it go well with cheese? Blah blah blah. These sorts of things help to bring the opportunity alive for a producer, and then it's easier to communicate your message that, I can see why consumers would really want to buy this, rather than just saying this is the finest quality XYZ from Serbia or from the Western Balkans, which may be true, but you need to have a reason why consumers would want to buy you and use you.
Okie dokie. Well, we have one question. I don't know, would you like, can you see the question? Or
yeah, I can see that from Peter Rajc. So
yes,
asking when are retailers open for changing their current suppliers, and how often they do this, especially for also for private label. I suppose there's no single answer to this, but most of the major retailers work on particular range reviews, so they would have a timescale when they review their category, and they're open to removing suppliers and adding new suppliers. So most of the changes on the shelf will be made as part of this range review exercise. It might be every 12 months, it might be every 18 months, sometimes longer than that. It depends on the category. And some changes they will make outside these range review periods. So occasionally they will make a change outside the range review period. So especially if it's a bigger brand prepared to invest promotional money with a retailer, they won't necessarily wait 6 months. They might say, okay, you can come in now because you're prepared to invest lots of money. So we're not talking about that situation for most Serbian and Western Balkan suppliers. But I think the lessons of that are, there's never a bad time to start talking to a retailer, because even if they're not about to do a range review, it's better that they hear something about you and you're on their radar early, rather than just waiting for a range review to happen. And as far as private label is concerned, again, they will typically work on a tender timetable, and that might be only every maybe 2 years or something like that, where they will invite responses from suppliers. So that tends to work on a more structured basis, inviting responses to a specific tender specification for them. So hopefully that.
The thing I'd add there is that the range review process can be longer than some world suppliers anticipate. It could be 6 to 9 months from them starting to look at who they might involve to actually ordering the product to be on shelves for the supermarket sets. I suggest if you are looking at multiple range reviews, to pursue other channels in the meantime as well. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
Well, there are not any more questions, so I would like to close the session today. Thank you very much, Sally. Thank you very much, Simon, for today. We'll be seeing you next week. Also, I would like to thank, as always, my colleagues Alex and Tiana, who without them we wouldn't run everything smoothly. So thank you very much. I wish you a very good afternoon and looking forward to seeing you on Monday.